Here's what's coming up on The World Today. China's ambassador to the UK warns the country of interfering with domestic matters in Hong Kong. Severe floods are being experienced in China and Japan following torrential rains. Plus, an Oxford scientist says the coronavirus may have been dormant around the world rather than originating from China. A warm welcome to you and thanks for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. China's ambassador to the UK has warned the country not to interfere with Hong Kong following the imposition of the new national security law in the administrative region. Ambassador Liu Xiaoming says the UK offer of a path to citizenship for up to 3 million Hong Kongers amounted to gross interference. He said he hoped the UK would reconsider its offer and that a decision on exactly how Beijing intended to respond to the citizenship offer would be made once it knew the details. Ambassador Liu also warned that if the UK decides against using Chinese tech giant Huawei technology to build its 5G network, this would send a very bad message to other Chinese businesses.
The UK government keeps making irresponsible remarks on Hong Kong affairs through its so-called 6-monthly report on Hong Kong, make unwarranted accusations against the national security law for Hong Kong SAR, and even talks about changing the arrangement for British national overseas passport holders in Hong Kong. These moves constitute a gross interference in China's internal affairs. After the law was adopted, British media carried massive reports and comments, which, to be frank, are full of misinterpretation, misunderstanding, and even distortion.
Joining us now is Channel Television's London correspondent, Giuliana Olenka. Giuliana, great to see you and thanks for joining us on the program. How is the UK government responding to this warning coming from the Chinese ambassador?
We haven't actually had an official response from Prime Minister Boris Johnson as of yet, but we have just moments ago from Tobias Ellwood, who is the Defence Select Chair of the Parliament Committee on Foreign Relations, and they were pretty strong with their rebuttal of Liu Xiaoming's press conference, quite an extraordinary press conference that he gave earlier today. They believe that he was audacious. They rejected all of the accusations of gross interference. They believe that what they are doing is positioning Britain as being a major player in trying to hold China to account. Of course, this all stems from the new national security laws, which were brought in a couple of months ago, and Britain have been pretty strong in emphasising and reiterating that this goes completely against the Sino-British Joint Declaration that was signed in 1985. And subsequently, Hong Kongers have been out in their thousands protesting against the increased encroachment of China and Beijing in Hong Kong.
But Giuliana, we've also heard the British Prime Minister also warn China not to interfere if Hong Kongers with British national status do seek to come to the UK. That decision was not well taken in Parliament when he announced it last week. Is there any indication that the UK will go ahead with the Prime Minister's decision?
No, they will go ahead with the Prime Minister's decision. In fact, it was very well received when Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, announced it last week. We did hear from the opposite member of the House who spoke up and said that it was widely accepted, actually, that Hong Kong nationals should be given British residency. I think what Parliament members were referring to is they wanted to make sure that it doesn't just include those who were born during the period of having a British passport. I believe there were only about 355,000 individuals that would automatically be accepted. There are a further 2 million Hong Kong residents that would also be given them. But I've got to say, quite widely, especially here on the ground, the British media and British parliamentarians are very much backing Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary's decision in extending British residency status to those living in Hong Kong.
And what about those who choose not to come back to the UK? I mean, the UK is offering this offer, making this offer to those who do want to leave Hong Kong. How about those who decide to stay? Because this new law really does not apply to them.
To be totally honest with you, Amarachi, I'm not certain. I think the reason why Britain have decided to go so public with this diplomatic spat with Beijing is they're actually hoping that China may indeed change their mind, or Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam may decide to, retract what they've decided to do. There are concerns about those who may be left behind. Of course, not everybody wants to come to Britain. People are protesting on the streets of Hong Kong because they want to make sure they can live there autonomously away from China, but that may indeed not be the case.
Giuliana, thanks a lot for bringing us up to speed on this, and I will be checking in with you in the course of the week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
In the meantime, the Hong Kong Police Force says it will cooperate with the Committee for Safeguarding National Security of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region to push forward the enforcement of the law on safeguarding national security in Hong Kong. The senior officer, Chris Tang Ping Kiong, says the law of the People's Republic of China provides legal backing for Hong Kong police to fight secessionism and other offences. He also says it strengthens the confidence of the police in safeguarding national security, and that the police force has set up a national security department which will do its utmost to cooperate with the National Security Committee so as to bring those trying to split China to justice. Pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong is still one of the few speaking out against the new national security law, at least in public, before a court appearance related to a protest last year outside the police headquarters. He told reporters the law not only targets a small group of people, it affects daily life of Hong Kongers.
The national security law is not only targeting a small group of people, it's affecting the daily life of Hong Kongers, and even enhance and encourage or facilitate more censorship in public library, in school, or in any kind of government service, which might be more tough and difficult for us. We still hope to encourage more people continue to engage in the democracy movement. Even they ban my book in public library, they can't ignore and silence the voice of Hong Kong people. With the belief of Hong Kong people to fight for freedom, we will never give up and surrender to Beijing.
And there are more reactions trailing the imposition of that law in Hong Kong. Here in Nigeria, Director General of the Bulla Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Bulla, says China is well within its rights to impose the new law. And he says it does not violate the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984 between China and the UK, stipulating the sovereign and administrative arrangements of Hong Kong after July 1st, 1997.
Nothing that we can rightly talk about violation. There's no violation. The issue is simply that we have the joint declaration and we also have the basic law. And the fundamental problem arising from the two is the confusion, the misunderstanding of high degree of autonomy, which is provided for in the joint declaration, and full degree of autonomy, which the protesters, which the Westerners, the United States, the British are asking for. There's a fundamental difference between the two, and that is what is actually at stake. The law prohibits secession. It prohibits terrorism. It prohibits any attempt by any Hong Konger to unite, to collaborate with any foreign organization or individual to undermine the authority of Beijing in Hong Kong.
It appears the Hong Kongers have found a way around those protests, which have not stopped anyway. They've changed the way they're carried out. Dozens, as you see there earlier today, participated in a regular lunchtime protest, raising a blank piece of paper to avoid slogans banned under the new national security law. Along with the blank pages, protesters also placed down empty sticky notes to represent their demands. The sweeping legislation punishes crimes related to secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces, with punishments of up to life in prison. The day after the law came into effect, a man was arrested for carrying a Hong Kong independence flag. Let's head on to southern China, where unusually heavy rainfall has continued to lead to widespread flooding. A central Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the new coronavirus pandemic, raised its flood alert level today as torrential rain and thunderstorms battered swathes of the country, including the Yangtze River, on which it sits. Wuhan upgraded its emergency flood response to level 2 from level 3, the second highest on its 4-tier scale, after days of heavy downpour submerged many of its roads. Torrential rains continue to batter China from Chongqing in the southwest to Shanghai on the east coast. The provinces of Zhejiang, Anhui, and Jiangsu all declared yellow alerts. Meanwhile, Japan's meteorological agency has issued a heavy rain emergency warning in 3 prefectures as torrential downpour continues to lash the southwest. The warning was issued in Fukuoka, Saga, and Nagasaki prefecture and is the highest level of 5 on the agency's scale. Weather officials are warning residents of landslides and river flooding as heavy rain is expected to continue even tomorrow. Unfortunately, at least 20 people have been killed in landslides in the southern island of Kyushu, with 14 people still missing. More countries around the world are reconsidering lockdown measures. Some have reimposed them as a surge in cases are experienced in areas that have already experienced the coronavirus. Here's the global update.
With more than 24,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, India has overtaken Russia in its total number of confirmed cases. This makes the country the world's 3rd highest at 697,413. There have been 19,693 deaths. About a month ago, India reopened its shopping centers, places of worship, and offices. The border between Australia's 2 most populous states will close from July 7th for an indefinite period following an outbreak of the coronavirus in Victoria State. The decision marks the first time the border with neighbouring New South Wales has been shut in 100 years. It appears history is repeating itself, as the last time the borders were blocked was during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic.
So today and tomorrow is the last time in which any Victorians will be allowed across the border unless they have a special permit or some exemption. We have done this based on health advice.
Latin America has reported more than 2.9 million COVID-19 cases, with Brazil topping 1.6 million confirmed cases in the region. The Brazilian Health Ministry raised the national count of COVID-19 cases to 1,603,055 cases, with a death toll of 64,867. And with no paparazzis or parties, Paris prepares for a virtual fashion week. The city, which is usually a buzz during its prestigious haute couture presentations in July, with hotels normally heaving with fashionistas and landmarks turned into catwalk venues, it's a different story this year. In a makeover triggered by the coronavirus crisis, top designers will now be experimenting with online showcases to try and keep their clients hooked.
still ahead on The World Today. And what you do when you have lots of money during this coronavirus pandemic? Yep, you make a face mask out of gold. And that's what he did. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today, and staying with the coronavirus, as senior Oxford University experts is saying, while the coronavirus may not have originated in China, it could have been lying in a dormant stage around the world for many years until the right environmental conditions allowed it to thrive. Dr. Tom Jefferson is a senior associate tutor at the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine under the Oxford University. He adds that there is increasing evidence showing that the virus was elsewhere before it emerged in Asia. His remarks were cited in the Daily Telegraph on Sunday, and they come amid recent reports that traces of the virus have been found in samples taken from several countries long before the first COVID-19 cases were recorded. Previously, Spanish virologists detected the coronavirus in samples taken from wastewater collected in Barcelona in March 2019, and their counterparts in Italy also found traces of the virus in the sewage of Milan and Turin last December. Moreover, Brazil lately reported the discovery of the novel coronavirus in sewage samples from last November. All of the findings mentioned above provide evidence that the deadly disease was around long before it was first seen in China. Dr. Jefferson said the COVID-19 virus has lain dormant around the globe and can be activated when conditions are favorable. Well, in China, the country is urging some U.S. politicians to stop distorting facts on COVID-19 related issues and to respect the fact that China has been timely sharing information and epidemic updates with the international community. U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee lead Republican Michael McCaul alleged that the Chinese Communist Party did not report the epidemic outbreak to the World Health Organization, which Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Zhao Lijian said was not supported by facts. He added that the fact that China has been providing information and updates on the COVID-19 epidemic situation in a timely manner has been recognized by the world. In the United States, prosecutors have asked a judge to schedule a Friday, July 10th court appearance in New York for Gillian Maxwell, the former girlfriend and longtime associate of the late disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell was arrested on Thursday in Bradford, New Hampshire, where she had been laying low since December for charges of luring underage girls so that Epstein could sexually abuse them. The FBI, Maxwell is charged with 4 criminal counts related to procuring and transporting minors for illegal sex acts and 2 for perjury, according to the indictment by federal prosecutors in New York. The FBI arrest of the British socialist was the latest twist in the mystery of Epstein, who went from a high school math teacher to a high-flying lifestyle of private Caribbean islands and powerful connections that his victims say allowed him to abuse minors with impunity. She was an Epstein ex-girlfriend who became a longtime member of his inner circle. In a 2003 Vanity Fair article, Epstein was quoted as saying Maxwell was his best friend.
We weren't even a human being to them. We were just another toy to be passed around. And that's what they did.
Well, staying with this, victims of the latest disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein spoke to Australia's 60 Minutes program about Epstein's former girlfriend, Gillian Maxwell. And during that interview, the victims recounted their experiences with both Epstein and Gillian. Epstein was awaiting trial on federal charges of trafficking minors between 2002 and 2005 when he was found hanged in an apparent suicide while in a New York City jail in August. He was just 66 years old.
We weren't even a human being to them. We were just another toy to be passed around. And that's what they did.
So several times I was in the car with her and she would ask the driver to stop the car. And she'd dash across to the school or the park or wherever she was going, and she would like write down her phone number for a child, a young girl. And then I'd see that child at the house. And she'd say, they're auditioning. You know, I found a model in the park. Basically, they brought me to the, Gillian escorts me to Jeffrey's room, and he's lying there, and he goes, well, here, sit down, you know? And so right next to him, and then Gillian sits on the other side, and they began assaulting me. But really, while I was lying there the whole time, I'm thinking, my sister's been around these people. My sister was 16.
Let's move to Israel now. Today, the country launched a new spy satellite that the country says would provide high-quality surveillance for its military intelligence. Israel has been building up its surveillance capabilities to monitor enemies such as Iran, whose nuclear program it sees as a major threat. The satellite, called OFEC-16, was shot into space early this morning from a site in central Israel by locally developed Shavit rockets, which was used to launch previous OFEC satellites. The Defense Ministry called OFEC-16 an electro-optical reconnaissance satellite with advanced capabilities. The first images will be received in about a week. State-owned Israel Aerospace Industries was the main contractor for the project, and the satellite's payload was developed by defense firm Elbit Systems.
The satellite is now going around the Earth and transmitting health monitoring to the ground station in IAI. And from now, IAI engineers, along with MOD engineers, will manage to test it in orbit prior to deliver it to the IDF.
So this coronavirus pandemic has got people doing really crazy things. Let's take a look at this man in India, in India's western Maharashtra state, weathering the pandemic in style by wearing a face mask made of pure gold. Shankar Kurkade told local Indian media that his mask weighs 50 grams total and costs around $3,870 to have it made for him by a jeweler. He claimed it will protect him from the new coronavirus and that small punctures in the mask allow him to breathe properly. Maharashtra is one of India's hardest hit states, which has reported around 2 million cases, 200,000 cases of COVID-19 and over 8,000 deaths. Well, he could have made it bigger since he had all that gold. Just saying. But thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.